What's up, everybody? This is TwoTenEast, and I'm back to discuss the K-drama Navillera, Navillera, whatever. In this video, I'll be reacting and discussing episodes 7 and 8. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I hope you enjoy your time here, and with that being said, let's get right into talking about these episodes. So, in case you didn't watch my video last week, I didn't really put the pieces together until after I made the video, and then I had to add a comment. But let me just quickly summarize. It definitely seemed at the end of the last episode like Mr. Shim was starting to have some memory issues. At the aquarium, it seems like he totally loses his way, and we also see a couple other examples like forgetting his anniversary with his wife and also forgetting his phone at one point. And I just really don't like this. I was really concerned last week, and this week we finally do get confirmation about our concerns. Towards the end of this episode, Che-Rock finds Mr. Shim's notebook that he forgot when he walked out of the studio. And in the notebook, Mr. Shim has written down that he has Alzheimer's. It's something that he has to do to remind himself of it so he doesn't forget. And this is pretty much what me and the other people that were commenting suspected. We'd seen him start to forget things, and it seems like it's only gonna get worse. We get these flashbacks of him going to the doctor and originally finding out about it. The reason he actually gave up his car to Yun-Ho wasn't just to be a good grandpa. Obviously, he was doing that, but it's also because he can't drive anymore. And it also explains why he has this notebook that he takes around everywhere he goes, because he actually needs that to remember a lot of things. And yeah, it's just really heartbreaking. I feel real bad for him, and I really hope that he can still reach his dream. There's still a bunch of episodes to go, so I hope it doesn't end badly for him and he still gets to do what he wants to do. And yeah, this episode really tugged at the old heartstrings when he was just finding out and when he was sitting in the park crying, and it's just really hard to watch. And I swear to God, man, he better reach his goal. I'm rooting so hard for him, and I've never been more invested in a character achieving their goals. Alright, then we've got Che-Rock, and he's still dealing with his ankle injury, and he's feeling very uncertain about whether he wants to go ahead with this competition despite the risk he's taking, or if he should just be patient and wait it out till the next competition. And he tries to go get more painkillers from the doctor, and the doctor's not really having it, which I'm glad that the doctor has that attitude and doesn't want to just feed into his, dependency on painkillers. I really liked the doctor's little saying that he has about don't pee in your pants for warmth, because what happens when the pee freezes? I've never heard that before, but it made sense, I guess. There also seems to be a little bit symbolic or metaphorical significance to the actual painkillers, which kind of mirrors Che-Rock's own internal need to kill or numb his own pain and guilt. He's trying to focus on the competition and on ballet and forget all of his troubles with his dad and his past and the blonde dude, just like he's trying to ignore this injury and mask it with painkillers. In this episode, Che-Rock is really grappling with this decision he has to make. He doesn't want to make the same mistake as Mr. Key, but he also doesn't want to give up so easily on the competition. There's the fact that he already told his dad he was going to be in the competition, and yeah, it's just really hard on him. It was great to see both Mr. Key and Mr. Shim being there for him and giving him advice, letting him know there will be a next time, and I'm glad that he finally makes the decision to wait it out to the next competition and rehab first. So I just want to go over this real quick. Mr. Key's little league dad mentality. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that saying. The idea is that there's dads that have kids and make them do sports and get so into their sports because they failed as an athlete when they were young, so now they're trying to vicariously live through their kids, and in doing so put unnecessary pressure on them. It's kind of a trope in some movies, and I've experienced it in my life as well. Not personally, but I've known other kids that have. Anyways, I just wanted to talk about this in relation with Mr. Key, because there's this scene where he talks with Che-Rock and basically just tells him that that's exactly what he wants wants Che-Rock to do. He's like, yeah, I got injured, I fucked up, but now I want you to do what I couldn't. You're gonna be there in my place. And it kind of seems like it's supposed to be a uplifting, inspirational thing, but I didn't really like it. I mean, it's putting a lot of pressure on Che-Rock, and it's also kind of diluting his intentions to support Che-Rock, coach him, and want him to succeed, because now we see that it's confirmed that he's literally vicariously trying to live out his own dreams through Che-Rock, and revealing that to Che-Rock and putting that pressure on him. I mean, everything else Mr. Key did in this episode was fine and great, so I hope it's not too bad, but right now, I just didn't really like that scene where he said that. So in this episode, we get to see something that we've been waiting to see for a while, which is Mr. Shim performing, doing actual ballet in front of other people. It's not the big performance that's actually his dream, but it's a step in the right direction, and it was such a great scene to see. Che-Rock, Mr. Key, even, everyone just looks so proud of him. Everyone's supporting him. All the other ballet people and the woman in the wheelchair, everyone's just so impressed. And speaking of the woman in the wheelchair, I'm just so glad that Mr. Shim saw her dance and perform and was able to draw inspiration from that. And this was especially great to see this very positive, uplifting triumph for Mr. Shim right after this like slew of scenes where he's completely doubting himself due to the fact that like all the neighbors and everybody in the neighborhood is now talking about him doing ballet and gossiping about him and talking shit. There's that scene where Mrs. Shim runs into that neighbor lady, and the neighbor lady tries to be like, oh, well, your husband's shimmying around. What? I don't even know what the fuck is that even supposed to mean? But yeah, Mrs. Shim just G-checks her and she's like, watch your fucking mouth. Like, I'll fucking throw this shit at you. Fuck you, bitch. And yeah, I love Mrs. Shim now. I've done a complete 180 with her and her character. She's fucking awesome. I love how she stands up for her husband and she's like, this is art that he's doing and I'm surprised you're so ignorant, and it's just great. And yeah, it's annoying that that lady thinks that, but I was way more pissed off with that fucking motorcycle delivery dude who just feels the need to stop on his bike just to like be a fucking dick to Mr. Shim. He's like, oh, you're a silly old man? Are you fucking kidding me, dude? I will fucking deck you. Don't ever fucking say that shit to Mr. Shim. And after this encounter, Mr. Shim takes that to heart and just completely doubts himself and says in the studio, oh yeah, ballet isn't for me because I'm old and ugly, and I swear to God, I'm gonna fucking kick the shit out of that guy on the motorcycle. But of course, this all leads to Mr. Key taking Mr. Shim to that ballet studio where he ends up seeing the lady in the wheelchair and then performing himself. So at least that is a moment of vindication for Mr. Shim. And then after that, of course, Che-Rock finds the notebook, so it's just like, wow, this episode was so up and down, such an emotional roller coaster. But overall, this was a great episode. It really tugged at my emotional side, and I'm just so invested in Mr. Shim's character now. I am going to break things if he does not reach his dream, and I am going to literally throw a party if he does. But yeah, that's it for episode 7, so let's move right on in to episode 8. Alright, so before I even start talking about this episode, I need you guys to be 100% honest with me. Like, keep it all the way 1000%. Did you actually remember the 3 words the doctor said to Mr. Shim as a way of testing his memory early on in the episode? Those 3 words? Because I definitely didn't. After he asked those other questions and then asked again, I totally forgot. So I was just curious if you guys remembered the words. Alright, just wanted to get that out of the way. Now let's get to the episode. Okay, so a lot of really depressing, sad stuff in this episode, but let's start with some positive vibes, some positivity, and that's when Che-Rock goes and meets the family. I just really love this scene so much. Yunho's dad is still super salty about when Che-Rock accidentally spilled water on him during the time he came into the studio. So he tries to kind of like jab at Che-Rock and he's like, oh, you must have a lot of free time. And I just, how many more reasons are we gonna get to love Mrs. Shim? She is just awesome. She stands up for Che-Rock immediately and she's like, how dare you be rude to my guest or whatever, and just puts the kind of a dick dude dad into his place. And she's just the greatest. What else can I say? There was just a bunch of great moments in this scene. I love when Seong-suk, the daughter, asks Che-Rock, are you any good at ballet? And he just answers, yeah, I am. And then everybody's like, oh shit, like they love that, and everybody's like, yeah, they laugh. Shay-Rock tells everybody about Mr. Shim's debut, and everyone's happy, and everything's all good. And I also like that moment that Shay-Rock and the Black Sheep dude have outside on the couch, where the Black Sheep dude is like, oh, such a pain, like celebrating my birthday. And then Shay-Rock's like, dude, you're lucky that you have a family, like I'm jealous of you. And that seems to hit home for the Black Sheep guy, and it's just a nice moment of him finding some perspective, maybe. So as amazing as this scene is and heartwarming as it is, there's this underlying secret, this looming shadow, which is that Shay-Rock now knows that Mr. Shim has Alzheimer's, and he's really having a hard time trying to figure out what to do about it, who to tell or not to tell. And early on in the episode, I knew this was going to be a problem. This was going to be the main struggle for Shay-Rock in this episode. And I was thinking early on, if he tells anybody, it should probably be Mr. Shim first, right? He should tell Mr. Shim that he knows about it first. And again, I have to just touch on how good of a job the show does at making you care for Mr. Shim up until this point, because it makes you feel, as the viewer, just like Shay-Rock. We know exactly how he's feeling because, for me at least, every moment, every scene where Mr. Shim is gonna be alone or has to go home or whatever, I'm just worried for him. I'm worried something's gonna go wrong. And you can imagine this is exactly how Shay-Rock feels. So Shay-Rock almost tells Mr. Key about it when they meet at the coffee place or whatever. He deflects when Yun-Ho kind of notices something when they're having dinner at the Shim's place, and also almost texts her about it later, and then also almost tells her when he meets up with her for coffee. And you can tell it's just a huge burden on him, and he's trying to figure out who to tell. And you know he's just got to eventually tell someone, right? Because it's weighing down on him so much. And that's why I'm glad that he has his friend, the soccer buddy. This is somebody who's pretty much completely on the outside, isn't Mr. Shim or his family, somebody he can just confide in. And I really like the friend's analogy of soccer, and that Mr. Shim is the striker and Shay-Rock is the goalkeeper, and to just have his back and be patient and let him take care of it. I love that, and I agree to a certain extent, but I'm also still worried that at a certain point it could put Mr. Shim in danger to not tell his family. There could be a situation where his family would be better off knowing about it. I don't know. I want to believe in Mr. Shim and follow what the friend is saying about the soccer stuff, but I'm also just worried still. So yeah, this battle that Mr. Shim is having with himself and his Alzheimer's is really casting a shadow over the show, and it's making the stakes even higher. And even though this episode had a lot of sad stuff, it does have good moments, happy moments, like the dinner at the Shims, and then also Mr. Shim and Shay-Rock going to the bathhouse, and they're able to bond there, and Shay-Rock confides in Mr. Shim about his dad and hoping that he can have a better relationship with him eventually. And yeah, it's just always nice to see them bonding. It was also just really sad when Mr. Shim goes for his checkup that he, by the way, forgets about. It's just getting worse. The doctor's like, it's just gonna get worse. And it's so sad, that moment when he can't remember what the day is or the year, but he can remember it in terms of his personal and emotional ties to it as markers. Like he remembers, oh, today's the day my wife goes to the spa or whatever it was. And he remembers, oh, this was the year I started ballet. So we're just gonna have to hope that he can keep using these tricks and methods to be able to remember things and hold on to them. Alright, so then we had this scene. When I saw this scene starting to unfold, I was just thinking, are you fucking serious? Really? Like, you're gonna bully an old man in the park? Seriously? That obviously is disoriented and doesn't know what's going on? I thought for sure when this started that the blonde dude was going to kind of see what was going on with Mr. Shim and actually help out, and this would be the big moment where he starts turning to the good side, maybe. But no, they like rough him up, and are you fucking kidding me? Like, what a piece of shit. And also, what the fuck? Why did no one around them do anything about it? That whole situation just made me so mad. And yeah, the blonde guy eventually is just like, okay, that's enough or whatever, but he only does it when Shay-Rock shows up and starts screaming at him, so he doesn't really get any fucking credit for that. And they're like taking his notebook and all this shit and like looking at his wallet or something, and what the fuck? Forget what I said earlier about the blonde dude coming to the good side. Maybe he still will, but this, I'm too mad at him right now. I don't accept him. Fuck him. So the other cool bit of information that we find out at the end of this episode is that there's a note in Mr. Shim's book that says his memory actually gets better when he sees Che-Rock dance. And in this moment in the park with the blonde dude and Mr. Shim being disoriented, Che-Rock tests that out and starts doing ballet right there in the park to try to help Mr. Shim. And then we also get this flashback to episode 1, and wow, my mind was blown here to find out that the reason that Mr. Shim found the studio in the first place was because he got lost due to his Alzheimer's starting to appear is so fucking poetic. The very thing that's starting to hold him back now is actually the thing that ended up leading him to his lost dream and to meeting Che-Rock and to starting all of this. And it's just a great piece of storytelling, a great detail. I love that. And also, this was just an amazing scene with Che-Rock dancing in the park, and it's incredible. This show has really become one of my favorites that I've seen in a long time. And at the end, it looks like it worked. At least Mr. Shim says Che-Rock's name, and I think he's remembering at least a little bit, and it looks like it's going to be okay for now. Man, this is getting tough. I don't know what's going to happen, honestly. I really don't. All I really know for sure is that I'm rooting for Mr. Shim 110,000%. That makes no sense, but you get what I'm saying. And yeah, I'm definitely so hooked on this show and so invested. Also, just want to quickly add the preview for the next episode. I fucking knew it. I knew that the black sheep guy, the son, I knew he was going to end up making his documentary about his father, about Mr. Shim. And I'm just thinking out loud right now, maybe it's going to actually end up helping Mr. Shim and his memory, because there's going to be actual footage of his practices and his time doing ballet, so he can never forget it, because he'll always be able to watch it back over when the documentary comes out. And there's all these other characters that we did check in with a little bit in this episode, like Yun-Ho and the politician college dude. And I'm just still kind of holding on to this theory that maybe they're all going to find their passion by way of interacting with Mr. Shim in his dream somehow. Like Mr. Key has already found that maybe he wants to be a coach because he's been inspired a little bit by Mr. Shim. And we see now the black sheep guy is going to come around and be connected with Mr. Shim and his ballet. And maybe Yun-Ho is going to find some kind of way that she can be involved. And I just hope that that happens. It would be so great for everyone to come together around Mr. Shim, help him, and have his story help them in turn. But yeah, that's going to do it for episode 8, and that's going to do it for this week's video. Big shout out and a big thanks to everybody who's watching this series, and make sure to let me know what you're thinking in the comments. Let me know how you feel about this show and where it's going. And that's going to be it for me. I'll see you next time. This is TwoTenEast, and I'm out.